Hey guys, what's up? It's a Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite movies, and today I'm going to be doing a review on a film I watched yesterday afternoon, and it's the new Robert Eggers film, Nosferatu. So yeah, I finally watched it. Yay! This movie came out in Christmas last year, almost a whole month ago, but the reason why I couldn't attend the premiere or the first few screenings of this film on Christmas Day is because I was busy packing. Because on December 26th, I have to travel to Seattle to meet my family and other people and see my grandma. So for the next 11 days after Christmas, I had no time to go to the theaters to watch this film at all, obviously. On, I think, January 5th or 6th, I came back to LA. But the thing is, A, we have the fires. B, I had to wait for my friend to come back from Hong Kong so that we could watch Nosferatu together. So, after waiting for a long time, after seeing when are we both available, we finally came up with a good time to watch Nosferatu, and it's yesterday. So I finally watched Nosferatu. Now, Nosferatu is the fourth feature film by amazing, genius, period gothic mastermind Robert Eggers, who has made some of the most exciting and intriguing horror films of the last decade. In 2015, he made the film The Witch, which is a quiet, quaint, but carefully crafted, beautiful, slow period horror film, and is one of the first few films when the, I hate this term, elevated horror movement had started with, besides Ari Aster and etc. But I truly fell in love with Robert Eggers' style in 2019 when he released the film The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is an absolute masterpiece and has inspired me a lot. Every single time I write a scene in a short film or in a script where the character goes insane, my first thought always or mostly drifts to The Lighthouse, because The Lighthouse is such a great film about insanity. Now, in 2022, there is The Northman, which is Robert Eggers' departure from horror and departure from A24. And this is a more mainstream flavored film about Vikings. And honestly, even though I was prepared to be disappointed, I ended up really enjoying The Northman. I thought Robert Eggers had a lot of fun with the cinematography and the performances. The story is good, but I think it is the unpredictable presentation that makes it so much fun for me. So obviously, everyone, including me, were extremely excited for a new Robert Eggers film, Nosferatu. Now, a little history on Nosferatu. The original Nosferatu came out in Germany in the year 1922, and 3 years ago, in 2022, I actually watched and reviewed that film. It is a silent film, yes, and it might be daunting for some people, especially normies. Just kidding. There are no normies in film. You like what you like. But, go check it out. Go check out the original Nosferatu. It is actually surprisingly solid. The filmmakers behind the original Nosferatu use every tool in the toolbox to create the gothic horror that is so influential, from German expressionism to tinting the frames, which is also part of German Expressionism anyways, the makeup, the set design. It's very fascinating as a silent film. Now, the vampire story has multiple iterations throughout cinematic history. In the 1930s, we have Carl Theodor Dreyer's Vampire, which I also watched, and I was surprised at how dreamy and vague and intangible the film is. It's almost kind of structureless. It's like a very early art house film. And in the 1970s, Werner Herzog has made Nosferatu the Vampire with Klaus Kinski, which I haven't seen. Then in the 90s, Francis Ford Coppola made Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is also a film I haven't seen, but I've seen stills from it and it looks colorful and beautiful and lush. So obviously there have been multiple interpretations of the vampire story. Now let's see what Robert Eggers is doing with this concept. Now let's get the elephant out of the bag first. Let's address the elephant in the room, and that is the cinematography and the production design is absolutely gorgeous. And in terms of cinematography, this might be Eggers' best work. Shout out to cinematographer Jaron Blaschke, I believe his name is called. If he doesn't get nominated for an Oscar, I am going to be very sad, because every single shot in this film, beautifully lit, beautifully composed, and this film, despite the fact that this film is in color, a lot of shots here look monotone but tinted, either in warm tungsten yellows or cold blues. Especially that one shot that a lot of people on Twitter loved, where Nicholas Hoult was standing in the middle of a crossroad surrounded by trees. That was gorgeous. I have to admit, that was gorgeous. The production design is great as well. Obviously, you have Robert Eggers' extreme attention to detail and historical accuracy, him freaking out that this candle isn't the right type of candle used in the 1830s in Germany. And so when I watch this film, I feel secure that there isn't any misrepresentation. The dresses, the gowns, the wallpapers, the molding of the door frames and the wooden tables and the paintings, the calligraphy, they are all carefully crafted. So I really applaud it. And I also love the sexuality aspect of this film. Obviously, I think by focusing on the sex, this film becomes less of a horror film, but I do think that some reinterpretation is needed. But here's what I'm going to say about reinterpretation. This Nosferatu is actually a very faithful adaptation of the original Nosferatu. Pretty much story beat by story beat, we pretty much have the same thing happening. Thomas Hutter, played by Nicholas Hoult in the new Nosferatu, goes into a bar and everyone's gone, and then he goes to the castle and it's really weird, and then Count Orlok goes to the ship. The ship has a plague. The ship arrives at the town, and then the whole town has a plague and everyone freaks out. And the thing is, even though earlier in this video I said I like that there's a bit of reinterpretation, but that isn't really that much of a reinterpretation. Ultimately, the new Nosferatu is still a very faithful and safe way to adapt the original. Now, Vampire is dreamy and vague, and I haven't seen the other two, but Herzog's Nosferatu apparently makes it a very human drama about stalking, and then Bram Stoker's Dracula is very much sexual and lush and sad and emphasizes the loneliness of Count Orlok. But the new Nosferatu by Robert Eggers does not have any of those. It actually doesn't reinterpret it as much. On top of that, when I was watching Nosferatu, in my head I was just like, that could be a long take. That could be a fun, crazy wide shot. Maybe the dream sequence could be trippier. Maybe if Robert Eggers add chapters in the story, it would be more interesting. Like, somehow, this film doesn't come off as creative as it could be. So, I feel like something's holding this film back. Another thing is that this is still very Hollywood flavored, even though this is supposedly Robert Eggers' passion project, and it's something that he's making for himself. Somehow, the entire visual language of this film is very Hollywood flavored, with quick editing and constantly moving camera movements. Let's talk about the acting a little bit. Lily Rose Depp, I've only seen her on another thing, and it's The Idol, which is literally the worst show I've ever seen. And honestly, even though Lily Rose Depp's performance in Nosferatu is leaps and bounds better than her performance in The Idol, I mean, blame Sam Levinson, her acting is still not that great. Whenever she gets physical, like the possession scenes, she's fantastic. She does amazing job. But when she's not possessed, whenever she acts normal, her performance is too theatrical, in my opinion. There's a scene where she's lying on bed and she's begging for help, and Willem Dafoe shows up. Seeing Willem Dafoe and Lily Rose Depp act side by side is such a heavy contrast, because Willem Dafoe completely nails every single scene he's in. The naturalism, his eyebrows, the way his eyes sort of search is so real and natural, and it just fits him like a glove. And that's what makes Willem Dafoe such a great actor. And so Lily Rose Depp just comes off theatrical and over dramatic right beside Willem Dafoe. And I think the story doesn't really get that fun and interesting and lively until the last act when all chaos breaks loose. And if there's one more thing I wish for, is that I wish this film was funnier. I don't know why, but I think the Nosferatu story in the 1920s is probably scary as fuck because we're dealing with post World War I Germany, we're dealing with Germany's reconciliation after the Spanish flu. But now in 2022, our perception of horror has changed. Our fears have changed. So I wish Robert Eggers would have adjusted the horror elements of this film towards a more modern mentality and maybe include a little humor, because a little humor would just make the story so much more fun and campy, and that's what I want to see, camp. But yeah, very overall, it's very well made. It's very solid. But unfortunately, I do have to say that this might be Robert Eggers' weakest film yet. I am giving Nosferatu a light to decent 7 out of 10. So, have you watched Nosferatu? Comments below, let me know. Subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.